Hey, this is Andrea.
And this is Amanda.
And you're listening to
Girls Nerd Out. Hello, everyone. It is me, Amanda, and Andrea.
Hey.
And we are super excited to talk to you about Rings of Power. And this is episode 4.
This one is called Eldest. Even though it's only 8 episodes, at least you could tell they really worked hard on it, not just acting wise, but like the clothing is beautiful, the scenery is beautiful, the creatures are beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have a creature in this episode that's very interesting looking.
Anything that's CGI, I think is done really well. It doesn't have that corny look.
The pale orc, like that was really corny.
Yeah, me and Andrea have issues with The Hobbit because of that pale orc that's all CGI.
They didn't have to do that. They could have gotten him in makeup. Like how all the orcs in this show, they're not CGI. They're actual people in like makeup.
They're realizing that that's what needs to happen because, in my opinion, that's why Alien Romulus did well, is because they're going back to like props, real sets, things like that, like not relying on CGI for everything. It makes you feel like it's actually real.
Yeah. And I didn't mean to like go on a tangent, but I'm going to have to mention Jurassic World because the first movie was good. They had a lot of CGI, but it was good. But then the rest of the movies were very obviously CGI'd. And the first 2 Jurassic Park movies, they used animatronics. The third one was when they started to use CGI. And I get it. It can be a lot when you have a lot of dinosaurs, but to have it all be CGI all the time really upsets me. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree, because you're watching a movie and when it's all CGI, like the parts that are supposed to be suspenseful, they just aren't. Because you're like, okay, that's not real. That's obviously not real. That's not real. So I think we're finally getting to a point that they're realizing that, and they're just using CGI for things that they literally couldn't do any other way, which is good. So there's our TED Talk.
Our TED Talk.
Yeah.
Can I say, in the beginning of this episode, Galadriel's hair looked amazing. I loved the braid. I loved how it was on top of her head, and I loved her clothing. That's my first thing that I noticed was how she looked. She looked stunning, and Elrond. Elrond's hair is very curly in this episode, and I loved it. Okay, sorry. There we go.
No, actually, her hair is something that people are happy about, which is rare right now. It's braided and up, and someone said that in the book, I think it states that she puts her hair up, like when she needs to get to business. So I think that was a nod to the book. So there's one thing that people were okay with. Oh,
they loved the outfits because somebody said today, can someone tell me where I can buy Elrond's outfit from episode 4? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, they definitely did a lot better on the costumes. It looks so good. When we start off, we've got Elrond and Galadriel, and from what I understand, the place where Celebrimbor is Aregion. I literally wrote it out phonetically. Aregion.
Aregion.
So I guess we'll go with that.
And I'm going to call Arender. I don't care. I'm just going to say it.
He's a new, like, character. Like, that's not been in anything else. You can call him that.
But, people call different characters different ways all the time, just like they do on Game of Thrones. So, like, people say people's names differently all the time, even if it's, like, specifically said, this is how I say it, So yeah. I'm just going to say it the way I know how to say it.
That's totally fine. They know who you're talking about. I made a note when, we first see everything, there's a bunch of like really pretty overviews of the landscape, and it looked very much like the Peter Jackson films, which I thought was a cool continuity thing. I like when they do that. It just makes it seem like, okay, we're in the same place.
Yeah, it was impressive. Also, Elrond was very feisty this entire episode, but especially in the very beginning because he kind of looked like he didn't want to tell Galadriel, "Hey, the High King's at the High King's urging, I agreed to appoint you as first lieutenant," because they haven't heard anything from Celebrimbor yet, so they're going to go see what's going on.
And they're not getting along.
Yeah.
Elrond is basically still disgusted with her and leery because of the ring that she has, which he does not know how connected it is to Sauron. And it is connected to him, not like the other ones, though. The rings that went to the elves, they did have a connection, so he's not wrong. He really isn't. It's just like, it's not like the others. The others were complete control.
Yeah, and they're both kind of feisty because she's just like the way that she says commander to him is just I was just like, wow, geez, I guess we're never gonna get them happy. I mean, I'm sure at some point they're gonna be fine, but
I don't think they're going to be cool until like it proves that the ring is really necessary for them to have, and then he might ease up off
true.
of it.
I just want to say he sounds like somebody that's got his underwear in a bunch.
Yeah, that's not a lie. That's not a lie at all.
That's what I wrote.
He looks irritated most of the episode.
Good acting, but
Yeah. Okay, so they show us the map, which I love when they do that.
me too.
Yeah.
And
So
Lyndon's
then,
like really like Lyndon's like in the front yard of where they're going. It's crazy how close they are.
yeah, that's why I love when they show that because so they're leaving Linden and going to a Region. I don't know if that's ever going to sink in. And amazingly, there's a massive bridge that is just broken.
Yep.
Huge bridge made out of rock.
How convenient.
Very. Apparently, that is a power that Sauron has.
He's very manipulative this way doing this because this takes away anybody going in and anybody getting out. Like it seemed like that's a very useful bridge that they
Yep.
have between areas. So I was just like, wow, he's very smart.
Okay, this helps me. I saw somebody say that the reason he can do something that powerful, like break a bridge, is because he doesn't have the One Ring yet. When he makes the One Ring, he puts so much of his power in that ring that he is weakened. So Sauron with no ring, he's full power in his form. And that kind of made it make more sense for me.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that little tidbit
Yeah.
because I was like, well, I mean, but the fact that they're like, hey, it's lightning, and Galadriel's like, no, this is Sauron. She knows her man. She knows him very well.
Yep. And the ring is talking to her, and apparently it's not connected like the other ones. But because Sauron gave Celebrimbor the idea, that's why the elf rings are just mildly connected because the idea came from Sauron.
Yeah.
So,
And the vision was kind of crazy because it like had a hand come out in dark areas because they were like, well, we're gonna have to go around. And I think this elf's name is Camnir. I think that's how you say it. He said we either head north, add 2 weeks to the journey, or south through the hills of Tirn Gorthrad. I think that's how you say it.
that's
Apparently that will
fine.
be apparently that will be faster. And she's like, nope, there's evil in those hills.
She knows. So they are forced to go south, which is kind of mirroring the Fellowship when they decide to go to Khazad-dûm. And it seems like that. It's like they know the path isn't great, but they're forced to take it.
Well, and what I felt like, I mean, I know obviously he didn't want to listen to her because he doesn't want counsel from a ring, and I get that, but he has a point. Sauron could be looking at both ways.
Elrond has reason to be leery of that ring. He really does.
And I like how he's just like opinion heard lieutenant.
That's just
Sorry.
funny.
I make a lot of comments about them because he's just so sassy.
He's very sassy. And do you know she's technically, I think, his stepmother?
Yeah, because isn't he dating
Yeah.
her daughter or married to her daughter.
Yeah. And that's how we get Arwen, which is just interesting to me.
I think it's cool.
It's very cool. After that, we go to Gandalf.
Yeah.
Gandalf. Sorry, I said it like that because I'm literally fighting for my life on social media because nobody wants to agree with me. It doesn't matter what I say, but it's Gandalf.
Oh, it
Ga-
definitely is.
Uh,
And I like because he's looking for Nori and Poppy, and he sees this random black goat, and I was like, don't follow the goat, but also follow the goat because it's interesting.
same, same. So he follows a goat, and we hear somebody singing.
I love this.
Yeah, man, this is a reveal. People have waited for a very long time to see Tom Bombadil on screen, and we got him. And I think he was cast perfectly.
He's cute. He's very cute.
He
Like his
is.
acting is great. I mean, again, I don't know him obviously, but I think he looks great. And I wrote part of the song. He said, "Send fires in the grass, bees around the willow." I just like the song. It's a really good song.
So obviously, the goat was meant to bring Gandalf to Tom. Like Tom's an incredibly powerful being. Tom is so powerful that he actually resists the One Ring. Tom resists the One Ring. He is not tempted by it at all. And what some people have a problem with is he's even more whimsical in the books, singing and not taking anything seriously. And he's actually in a different place in the books. He's in the forest. And he's very disconnected from what's going on with Sauron. And that's what people are complaining about. That this Tom is in the East and he's trying to like mentor Gandalf instead of being just totally whimsical and far removed from everything.
He's still whimsical
He
though. I
is.
mean, he's
He is.
singing and he seems pretty whimsical to me. I mean, the way that he talks to the stranger in the tub or, Gandalf in the tub, he's like, "Oh, are you, I don't know, are you really here?" Like that kind of thing.
Yeah. So Gandalf is looking for a Gand, which is obviously a staff, Gand.
Yep.
And so Tom basically leads him to a tree, and you see, like, it looks like Gandalf's staff. It's like kind of twisted piece of wood. Well, the trees are not exactly quiet in this part, especially not around Tom. So Gandalf just thinks he's going to take this branch. And so the tree says, no, you're not taking that from me, and proceeds to
Eat him. I'm
eat
just kidding.
him.
That's what I called it. I was like, is he eating him?
I said devour. I was like, the tree devours him. He is completely in the tree, just like Merry and Pippin when they go into the forest in Lord of
Yeah.
the Rings. So he's in there for quite a bit, and he's not really in super danger.
No.
The music doesn't give you that idea. I
No.
honestly, Tom's supposed to be basically omnipotent, so Tom knew the tree was going to do that. So that's whimsical. He leads him to a tree and then the tree eats him. So after Gandalf gets eaten by the tree, we see Nori and
Nori.
Poppy, and they're fine. They don't know where they are because everything is sand and it looks the same. Speaking of whimsical, this whole scene, oh god, you talk about it. It made me
When they meet
laugh.
Merrimack,
Yeah.
because I love him. He's so cute. So first you see a bunch of, those guys in the gold mask and the black. You see them and then they jump off a cliff, which I was like, how are you doing that? Like I would break my leg. um,
Seriously.
and they stand up and they think that they lost them, and then all of a sudden this guy's like, who are you? Like, how'd you get here? Where'd you lot come from? His name is Merrimack. He's another, well, he's not a Harfoot. We find out what he is later, but they think he's a Harfoot because he looks like them.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, first he says, my name is Nobody. They're like, you can't be nobody. He's like, well, that's what everybody tells me. I'm a nobody.
God,
I'm like,
told you it was whimsical.
Poor boy. But his name is Mary Mac. His mom calls him that. I think he's cute, and he looks like he's got the hots for Poppy, and Poppy has the hots for him. And they just kind of stare at each other and smile for a bit. And I thought that was really cute because even Nori's just like, "Excuse me."
Oh yeah, they definitely have a thing for each other.
And I guess he stole some water from big people,
Uh-huh.
and they're like, "Well, you're gonna give us some, or we're gonna tell." And then he's gonna take them to meet his group, his dwelling.
I was just gonna say, yeah, they don't give him a choice. They follow him.
Yeah, and he gives them 4 rules, which is really funny how he does this. Their leader is called the Goond. 1, never look at her in the eye. B, always stand 3 steps back. And then 4, no matter what, call her the Goond. And they're like, wait, are there 3 rules or 4? I'm like, no, there's 1, B, and 4.
That was hilarious. I thought that was super cute.
I had to pause because I was laughing so much.
So they follow him, and you see, basically, it is a village of what will be hobbits. And it's really cool how they panned in and showed how like it's a full on village because they had crops in different little areas, and it's obvious that this was the beginning of the Hobbit hole because they
Yeah.
have little holes. I thought that was neat. I like that.
And I like what they call themselves, the Stewards.
Yeah. So there were 3 groups that ended up being the Hobbits, the Harfoots, the Stewards, and there's another one. And I think it's really interesting that a lot of people don't realize the Harfoots are actually a thing. They become hobbits. The 3 obviously eventually get together and settle, but this is our second group that's in the book, the Stewards. So I love that.
I love them, and I really instantly liked the Goond. I really did. Because we meet her, and she's already yelling because she didn't want them to be there because they're outsiders, and she's already upset that they're there, and they have to explain themselves because they're looking for their friend. Poppy and Nori are. They're helping the stranger, and I want you to say what she says
Oh,
to them
God.
about Gandalf.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Because I thought of that last night and it's not in here. Okay. So the only wizard that the stores know about is the Dark Wizard, obviously. So wizard is not something they want to hear. So she's asking Nori and Poppy, what are you even doing here? And they're like, we're helping our friend. And she's like, well, what kind of friend? And they're hesitant, but they're like, he's tall. And so automatically they're kind of leery. They don't like big people for good reason. Good reason. And and then I'm sorry, this just cracks me up too bad. So he's tall, and so she asked them, so he's a grand elf? Grand elf, grand elf, grand elf, Gandalf. I don't know what more people need at this point.
It's very obvious. Oh, and then the 4th rule apparently is don't talk back to the Goon. But yeah, because Poppy talked back to her. But yeah, that scene was just great. We learned a lot.
Tell me about your grand elf, Gandalf. Anyway, also, they're not going to have somebody learning from Tom Bombadil that's not Gandalf. Sorry, guys.
No.
That's another reference to me fighting for my life on Threads and TikTok. It's totally fine. Oh, by the way, I know this isn't the end of the podcast, but you should really follow the Princess of Dragonstone on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. And I'm Southern Mother of Dragons on the same. It's a good time right now. You can watch us fighting for our life, and you can join in if you'd like. Anyway, yeah. So
Yeah.
shameless PR.
There's a scene with the Dark Wizard, if you want to talk about that too, because
Yeah. Okay. So the Dark Wizard, who's Saruman, he has the Easterlings in there, and the Easterlings show up empty-handed again. He's not happy about it, and they're like, "Well, yeah, we'll get him. We're gonna get him." And the Dark Wizard says, no, you go after the halflings, which is also something that Saruman says. Anyway, and he says, I will take care of the Istar. Now, here's something that I keep seeing over and over again. Yes, he is referring to Gandalf as an Istar. That doesn't mean he's not one. Like, a lot of people are saying, well, he called Gandalf an Istar. Okay, there's no difference between that and me calling Andrea a female or a
Yep.
chick. That doesn't mean I'm not one. That's just a descriptive. So he's Saruman. Anyway, so the Dark Wizard is going to be going after Gandalf, and the Easterlings are going to look for Nori and Poppy. That's what we
Yeah.
get out of that.
I thought that was interesting because,
Mm-hmm.
but I like how the Dark Wizard or Saruman is just like, I'm gonna take care of the Eastar, and I'm like, no, what does that mean? What does that mean?
And here's another trippy thing. So Saruman was always jealous of Gandalf, even in the beginning, because Gandalf was offered to be the leader, and he passed on it because he still felt insecure. And so Saruman has always known that Gandalf was more powerful than him. So there's a little side note, just saying.
And then after that, we get to see Tom and the stranger again, but the stranger's like taking a bath, and you hear Tom in the background singing. Well, actually, before that, you see the tree. Let's talk about the tree first.
Oh, yeah.
Because sorry, I'm skipping over things. So Gandalf is in the tree, and Tom goes and talks to the tree, and he's talking to him to let him go. He's like, go back to sleep, let him out, that kind of thing. What is a Withywindle? What is a Withywindle?
I'm so glad you asked me about that. Awesome. Okay, so that is part of the explanation for why Tom is in the East. The Withywindle is actually the river where he finds Goldberry. So, yeah, it's a reference to the forest that he's not from there. We don't know where he's from, but that's where he's settled. He settled in the forest, and it's near the Withywindle, and that's where he meets Goldberry and where they have a house. So
That's
that
so
was kind
cute.
of like a nod. Yes, exactly. So that's a nod to that. And then a little bit later, he explains why he's actually there.
So then we're seeing the Gandalf taking a bath, and you hear the singing. And I really like the singing, but then you hear a woman singing too, and I obviously that's Goldberry, but I was very curious because when he comes in to say, "Hey, you need to get like dressed and come eat by the fire," Gandalf's like, "Is there anybody else here?" Because I heard a woman, and he's like, "What woman?" And I wrote, "You sang with her, so there's definitely a woman here." And then he's like, "You're here, or I think you are." And then when Gandalf goes out there, you don't see anybody else but like a goat and him. So it's very odd.
Okay, so the stranger can hear them in the next room, and Tom actually says Goldberry, so you know it's her.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the whimsical, because the stranger is like, you're not alone. And Tom's like, well, you're here. I mean, it was perfect because that's how you answer a question without answering a question. Okay, this is what I think. I think Goldberry was there. I think she's invisible. No, I think she's invisible. I think Goldberry is invisible because Gandalf does not have control of his magic. I think that's my thing. I think when he gets his staff, aka Gand, I think he will be able to see Goldberry. So that again, that's just a guess, but that's what I think. I think she actually was there. But since she is a river spirit, I think she's invisible to him right now. Which, if that's true, I think that's awesome.
Oh yeah, I think that's really cool. So I really liked it. I liked the singing. I thought it was cute.
Well, did you like him explaining like who he is and all the questions? Like,
well, like him saying Tom. Well, he talked about him in third person, which was interesting.
Yeah,
He said
that's
Tom
funny.
was there before the river and the trees. Tom remembers the first raindrop and the first acorn. He knew the dark under the stars when it was fearless. This whole place used to be green, and now it's just sand.
Exactly. And that is why the name of this episode is Eldest, because Tom is the oldest being that you encounter by far. And some people think he's God. Like he's actually God.
That's possible.
It is. We're not meant to know. There's so many fan theories, but like Tolkien actually said, you're not meant to know what he is ever. Goldberry too, for that matter. So the reason why he's not in the valley that's close to the Withywindle River is because it does say in the book that Tom obviously travels around. Well, apparently where he's living now, which is sand, just like everything else we've seen in the East, it was not always sand. And Tom, being what he is and knowing everything, he knew something was going to happen there. So he's there and he says this line. He says, "You're not the only Istar to sit by my fire and eat honey."
Yeah.
Okay, so that means the Dark Wizard is an Istar. Like, people are saying that he said that about, because he's talking about the Blue Wizards. No, he's talking about the Dark Wizard. Because after that, he says that the Dark Wizard is here and he wants power.
Well, he has power, but he seems to always want more.
Yep.
And then they mentioned Sauron too, because Gandalf has to fight both of them, and or whatever, take care of face both of them. He didn't say fight, he said face, but I'm just assuming fight both of them what I thought was interesting was that he talked about Sauron and Saruman cannot get greater without Sauron. So if those two got together, all hell would break loose.
Exactly. So when the stranger says, "Is it my task to stop the fire? Is it my task to face Sauron?" And he tells him, "Your task is to face them both." Okay, Gandalf, eventually, he yields the ring of fire. Gandalf is associated with fire. That's it. Galadriel is associated with water. And then the ring that eventually goes to Elrond, which is not a spoiler because this is really old. That is air. There's an element to each of the rings. But that's what makes his fight with the Balrog make sense, is because he yields the ring of fire. So that's why Tom is telling him, yeah, you're going to fight the fire.
Well, what really got me was the ring, plus the fact that he said you have to face them both. I'm like, how is this not Gandalf?
Who's the most
Like,
powerful of the Astari, Gandalf, and he asked Tom why he doesn't. And Tom, very whimsical, says, "Tom's a wanderer, not a warrior."
yep.
And that's the only explanation he'll give.
I loved that. That was so
And
cool.
yeah, and some people are saying he's not whimsical enough. I'm like, eh. The
I
one in
think
the book just sings a lot more and dances. So, but I don't know how that would have worked on screen in this situation. So I think they did a good job. The actor did a good job, and I think they really worked in his personality, considering the situation, very well.
yeah, I was as somebody that hasn't read the books, I was very happy with it. So I thought it was perfect.
Same.
All right, so we're in darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Very dark. So I have really bad eyesight. When I watched this episode, I thought it was just my eyes. So I go to a very dark room and realize, no, it's literally just going to be dark. So, but I was able to pay attention to the scenes, and I really liked the scenes. So it's known to men as a Barrow Downs. This is where they laid their lords and kings to rest, which I thought was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the elves, I can't remember his name, but he said, "Dead men are no threat." And I'm just like, that's where you're wrong.
Yeah, and people did have issue with that, and I agree. Like, the Barrow Whites are there, and I mean, that's the elves know that. They know that that's where they are, and they know that's not something you should mess with. I guess that was just done like that just to make it more impressive when they show up, I
Well, they're
guess.
they're very knowledgeable in the area. You're right. And what I think was cool is how they were talking, like singing, like somebody was singing. So like, cold the hand and heart and bone, and cold be sleep under stone. And then the elf that said, "Don't worry about the dead," he sees like in a distance this like cave looking thing, and inside, all of a sudden, you see glowing eyes, and that was freaky. It was really cool but freaky.
I will say this, Andrea and I already talked about it. There are several scenes in this episode where it's giving the long night Game of Thrones. It was too dark to see, and so both of us had to go to a room with no light to watch. Look, you can have dark scenes, but please don't make it to the point where we actually have to go into a room, shut a door, and have no lights on. That's a bit
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
And they find I agree. They find the messengers, or at least, I don't know if I couldn't tell if they were the bodies or just their stuff. I think it was their bodies too. But they found the messengers that were sent to Celebrimbor.
Yep.
And I think the king sent more than one dispatch. There might have been more than just those two there.
Yeah, and the actual letter was there too, which I was really surprised that it was there. Um, but I guess that's just to let us know who they were, probably.
And now we know who dragged those bodies there, because
Yep.
they were the whites.
Yeah, who are creepy.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to talk about the badass scene?
Oh yeah. So basically, all these whites come out. They look really cool, by the way. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
could see, and then all the elves are standing there, and they take out their weapons. Like Galadriel takes out her bow and arrow. There's another she elf that has her bow and arrow out, and then everybody else. Like, it's just really cool. They're all standing in a circle, and I didn't realize until today. Amanda said that it's giving like Avengers. To me, as a Shadowhunter fan, but they were standing in a circle in Shadowhunters just like that, and they were looking at the demons. And they each had a weapon except for one person. He had an inhaler, but that's what it was giving me, and I really liked it. It was a very superhero stance. It was very just hero in general stance, like the elf heroes or whatever.
I got a better one for you. They
Yeah,
were the Elf Vengers.
elf vendors. Yeah, I like that
The
one.
Elf
That's better.
Vengers. It immediately reminded me of the Avengers though, because like I'm kind of a Marvel nerd, or was at one point.
I think yeah, I liked it. And I should just mention really quick, they did manage to kill one of the elves, and I've seen some complaints about that, because he is a person of color. So people are like, of course you picked,
What?
yeah. So people are upset about that. I've seen some complaints today.
The elf that died. Okay, that
He had one line. So I don't know.
he was a red shirt. That's what Star Trek fans call when there's an away mission or something's going on. They would always have a guy in a red shirt, and you know that was the guy that was going to die.
Yeah.
So a red shirt is a guy that comes along, or I say guy, female, anybody, alien, comes along, and you know you're not there to last. It wasn't his color, it was the fact that he had one line and he didn't have something that they needed for later. He was a red shirt. That's the only color that matters, is that he was a red shirt. He wasn't going
I'm
to make it.
I'm just glad they didn't show his death. You heard it though, which was
Yeah.
disturbing. So they start fighting off the Barrow Knights, or Whites, sorry. And basically their weapons aren't working. They're immune to the Elvish weapons, which I thought was interesting. But what's upsetting is when Elrond realizes, okay, there is a stone of something. I didn't know what he was doing at first, because he just told people to come with him, and I thought maybe he was going to run away into something. No, that's not it. There are weapons that the kings and the lords that were buried there, their weapons were there with them. And apparently, according to lore, that is what you do. You kill them to put them back to rest. You use their own weapons against them. And I'm like, why didn't you think of that before?
It's kind of funny because Y'all knew that. And look, I don't know.
You've been in tombs for 1,000 years. How did you not think of that before?
That it didn't make sense. That's a big writing hiccup right there.
That was my main complaint for this episode and the darkness. There's another one, but we'll get to that.
It's basically Aragorn and Legolas looking for the hobbits, except we've got Erendir and Isildur looking for Theo. And actually in my notes it says random chick. I just think it's funny because she just kind of seemed to come out of nowhere. So it's Eastrid, and she has the mark of Adar.
She wanted them to look north because there was more wild men, and so then all of a sudden we see Erendir realize that she's like hiding something because she has a mark, because she tried to burn it off in the previous episode, and he noticed that she had a recent wound. And he's very smart, this Erendir. He's just intelligent. She realized he was figuring it out, so she tried to run away. Didn't work.
No, that did not work at all.
And so they have to handcuff her and go look for Theo. And Theo was not taken by men. They obviously were taken by trees.
Obviously. Obviously. What do you think about her, though?
I mean, I thought she was like bad, but because she was like trying to be manipulative and bring them to a more dangerous part of the north, like the northern part is, I guess, more dangerous. So I was like, why is she leading them there? I was very shocked that she was doing that because I didn't expect that. And then there's a scene where it's just those three, Erendir, Eastrid, and Isildur. They're going looking for Theo, and there's a lot of mud and very heavy, like thick mud, and like kind of like quicksand looking. Well, Isildur gets sucked into it, and then Erendir tries to get him and goes in, and then she's just kind of like, what? And then she like runs away, and I wrote down, oh my God, she's trying to run. Of course, she's going to let them die in that mud. And then she goes and saves them. So I don't think she's bad 100%.
But let me ask you this.
Yes.
When Isildur is in the mud, there's absolutely no way that anybody that has seen the Neverending Story does not immediately think of Atreyu and Arthas, because it just gives it way too hard. It really does. It's like, oh my God, my childhood. Hello. It's like quicksand, but it's mud. Is it the nothing? Has he lost hope?
Artax, you're sinking! Come on, turn around! You have to now!
I just immediately thought that.
I freaked out though because I really like Isildur. I know a lot of people think he's boring, but I've seen a lot of comments saying this episode they liked him a lot and they think him and Erendir have good chemistry. And they do. And so when she gets a branch to try to bring them out, she's thinking she's bringing them out, right? And there's this giant like snake worm thing in there, and I was hoping they would kept that up a little bit longer. Just because it was so cool looking. But Erendir killed that creature and said, this is supper.
Okay, so there are creatures deep, 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 deep down. And I think they're reference to the unnamed beast or the unnamed things, something like that. And they're so creepy and dangerous that even the Balrog doesn't mess with them. And I think that might be one of them. I'm not sure. I think it's a theory that might be one of them. Galadriel kind of leads us to think that Sauron's unleashing anything evil, like he's bringing it to the surface, waking it up. I kind of thought that might be why that thing is there.
We go back to the Stewards. They tied up Poppy and Nori, and for some reason they tied up Merrimack too. But you can talk about the beginning of that because I really like the map that they show on the wall, and I kind of wanted to say what that was.
Okay, so they're trying to plead their case and explain, and they mention Sadok, who was like the leader of the Harfoots, and then the stewards are like, wait a minute, what? You start to think, are these people related? She
Yeah.
takes them down in a cave, and it's like it's their history.
Yeah, it's a beautiful map, and that she talked about the steward who dreamed of a place with endless streams of cold water and where a family could dig a hole in less than a month, and they call it the Suzat. The leader said he took like a group of people to go look for the Suzat, and said they would send someone back, but that's the last anyone ever heard of. I think the name was Barrows, which is what Sadok's last name is. And then Nori put two together. She's just like, oh yeah, the walking song. And so clearly they are all like related in some way. I mean, at some point, because this group of Hardfoots they don't have a home, which was really sad. They don't have what this is. And I looked up what a Suzat is. It is the Shire. That means the Shire. And it looked like the Shire too, which I was like, no, they haven't found that yet, but eventually you will.
Okay, so, and this is Tolkien canon. The Harfoots, the Falahides, and the Stewards are the three groups that eventually become hobbits. And you're right, they will eventually find the Shire. I do like the fact that those three groups, like, that's canon. So, like, nobody could really complain about the Harfoots not being called hobbits because they weren't hobbits at that point.
No.
So, they will eventually get together. I don't know if we'll see the Falahides or not. We might. But I think that's really neat because, like you said, you can tell that is pre-Shire Hobbit hole building. And it makes sense. And then, like, I would assume once they find the Shire, all their different talents will come together and make it what it is.
Yeah, and I thought it was really good acting by the person that plays Nori, because she had like some, she was obviously sad because because they were like, well, I don't think this Roramass person ever found it, because we don't have a home, and that just really killed me.
Here's what I find interesting. So they hear horses approaching, and it's the Easterlings. And I find it a bit fascinating that pre-Dark Wizard, apparently the Easterlings and the Stewards existed and just left each other alone, which is so strange because the Easterlings seem like just pure evil. So it kind of makes you wonder, before the Dark Wizard, were they? I don't think so.
The one hit the goon in the
Ugh.
knocked her down, and then gave his hand out for her to stand back up. I thought that was crazy.
I'm so glad you said that. That's what made me wonder if before the Dark Wizard, they didn't know each other. Because he's, I think, the leader of those Easterlings. You want me to talk about my Saruman proof real quick?
Yes.
All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We have the Easterlings, and I think his name's Brank. Okay, so last episode, he asked, will you cure our flesh? Which is just a very weird statement and sounds like it must be pretty bad. So when the masked Easterlings are with the Stewards, they make a threat. And the threat is, if you don't give us the halflings we're looking for, you're going to find out what's underneath these masks. So that got me thinking, okay, it's not something they caught and had before the Dark Wizard was there. This is something that the Dark Wizard caused. And then I had one of those moments, it's like that meme of the lady with like all the mathematic symbols around. That literally happened. Because I remembered that in the Two Towers, when Saruman is creating the Uruk-hai, he gives an explanation, which he's talking to one of the Uruk-hai, but it's obviously for us, obviously, just so we understand. And he says, do you know how the orcs first came into being? They were elves once, taken by the dark powers, tortured and mutilated. And that got me thinking. And this is the part that really, really, a ruined and terrible form of life, and now perfected my fighting Urukai. The perfected part is what got my attention in my brain, because I think the masked Easterlings are the beginning of what Saruman eventually has as Urukai. And also, this is a different story, different everything. I think the Dark Wizard has already started his weird experiments to have an orc type army, but have them be able to walk in the sun, which that was the thing about the Urukai, is that they could go out when the sun was out. So I think that's what he's doing, because these Easterlings obviously can go out in the sun. So I think that's proof that he's Saruman. Who else changes something into something else? Nobody.
Yeah.
We know barely anything about the Blue Wizards. Come on. So
I know.
I think these Easterlings with a mask on, when the reveal comes off, I think it's going to be pretty damn creepy. And I think it's going to make sense, because Saruman will then continue. And that's why in the Two Towers he says it's perfected. He's been working on this creepy stuff for quite some time. It's creepy.
Mm-hmm.
If you disagree, feel free to leave a comment. Feel free.
So Galadriel and Euron are Euron. Jesus, I've got too many things in my
That's
head.
your man. That's your man.
Yes, that's my man. Elrond and her are talking. He's still like pretty upset with her, like it's very obvious in the way that he looks. And she's trying to tell him that, and by the way, her hair looked good here. It's like kind of half braided into like a half ponytail and her hair is down, but like she's got a braid still. She's trying to tell Elrond that the ring is guiding her, which it seems to be, because she's getting visions and all this stuff from it. And we do get another vision. We actually see this vision really well. It's really fast though. I had to pause it a few times. I still couldn't really understand who was falling down in this vision, but we see Halbrand at least at the end, and I was like, is this like, so he must obviously change his face again, because I'm like, why are we seeing Halbrand again? And then we see Elrond getting captured or something, and we also see a statue getting knocked down, but I couldn't tell what that statue was.
Elrond has a knife or some kind of dagger like next to his neck, and it looks like he's been fighting for a long time. And I don't know if the Halbrand thing is going to be a vision that he projects to her, maybe. But I would assume the part with Elrond in it, we found out that apparently the destruction of Eregion is going to be like a 3-part thing. So I think it's going to be pretty damn brutal.
Well, he looks pretty like bruised. There's dirt all over him, so it looks like it's going to be quite a battle. And as for Halbrand, it could be just a vision, or he could switch it up. I don't know. It's very possible. After that, we get to see Eärendil with Isildur and Istrid, and Eärendil gives her this key to unlock her manacles, but I guess he's leaving that up to Isildur. And Isildur, I thought Isildur wasn't going to unlock it, but he did, which I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, because she takes his sword and threatens him with it. Yeah. And I don't know why she did that. I don't get it, because they haven't tried to hurt her at all.
I don't know either. That's why she's a mystery to me. I can't figure her out.
No, but he clearly has a thing for her, and that just kills me, because I'm like, I mean, I get it, but hey, we see walking trees.
I've been waiting for this. I didn't realize what was going to happen, and I cried. I actually cried.
I like their names, Winterbloom and I wrote it down. Snaggleroot. Yes, I like their names.
Okay, so it's not just a tree.
No.
It's an Ent, and it's one of the Ent wives. And
she's awesome.
She is very protective, and she is definitely on the defense with good reason. So Eärendil, he speaks to her, and he explains to her that I am Arendir of the Greenwood, which is kind of like saying I'm a woodland elf, similar to Legolas, but different area. Because, he said he's from Beleriand and that, is flooded. And she recognizes that and gives him pause. And she says, "Hast thou ever touched axe to wooded life?"
Yes.
And he apologizes and says that he has. And she gets very angry. And her husband shows up, and that's Snaggleroot. Snaggleroot is a bit more calm than Winterbloom. And so Arendir basically is trying to figure out what's going on. So since Snaggleroot is a bit more calm, he explains that the Dark Wizard and an army of orcs came in and started cutting the trees. And they specifically say maiming and murdering as they marched.
I like that, and I also like that he says Winterbloom nourished many of these trees from seed and sprout.
He
So of course
did.
she's gonna be pissed.
This broke my heart. He said, "The spinning sap and burning branch called to us from afar, but we were too late." So the trees that were getting burnt and chopped down called for the Ent's help, and they were too late. And then it's obvious why Winterbloom is so upset. Like Andrea said, these were saplings that Winterbloom tended to. These were basically children. And what's so amazing about this is, okay, so the Entwives, they don't know where they are by the time we're in the Third Age, Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, any of that. And the Ents don't even remember what they looked like. Well, what we just saw, like, I've seen people on the internet making all kind of comments about how she's so brutal. No, I think the Entwives are the doers in the Ent family. I think it's just that way, which makes sense because the Entwives go off together. So I think the Entwives are the ones that are pretty fierce.
Well, she has a right to be upset.
Yes.
I mean, I felt her pain. I felt it, especially when Arendir touches her. It's just it's understandable how she is the way she is.
I think, like in every couple, there's there's, there's a flower and a gardener. Winterbloom is definitely the flower. She's the one that's like, all right, I'm just going to take you. And then Snaggleroot's like, okay, well, let's talk for a minute. And it just makes so much sense because the Entwives were the ones that decided to explore. And it was really touching because, Arendir tells her, "We will see to it that the trees of this wood are left in peace." And she reaches out her hand, which obviously looks like a branch, and touches his hand, and I just lost it.
Oh, I lost it there, and I lost it when because he asked for forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
And she says forgiveness takes an age, and she takes out a flower and puts it on him. Like I was like, this is really beautiful. I'm very happy that they put that in there.
Look, you want to talk about couple goals? When they start asking questions, Snaggleroot says, basically, no, don't bring this up. She can't take anymore. She's grieving. Like, he's trying to say, look, don't send her further into this. And it's just so sweet. And she ends up talking to him and they find out what happened anyway. But his immediate response is, no, don't make her go down that path again. I never thought I'd see an Entwife. I thought it was great. They looked really cool. And they made everything from this point on mean so much. Every time you see an orc cut down a tree, it's gonna hit different, I guess, is what I'm saying.
I really enjoyed that scene, and I thought the CGI of them looked really good. And I know that Snaggleroot is voiced by, I can't think of his name right now, but he's voiced by Professor Slughorn, who's in Harry Potter.
Which is really cool when you messaged me that because I thought his voice sounded familiar. So it did for a reason, and that was
Jim
cute.
Jim Broadbent, I think his name is. I think that's how you say his name. Yeah, I really like him.
Well, it was just cute. And
They let Theo go too. All the
yep.
people that they captured in the trees, they let them go, which I thought was really sweet.
Yeah, what do you think about what he said? Why he doesn't stay?
He says that he's got business of, or no, he has promises to keep, but I don't know what promises. Maybe promises to that he made with his mom, or maybe he's going to do something rogue.
It kind of felt like he might do something rogue, but I'm not sure.
He looked innocent enough, but I could be wrong. I liked that he gave Arender a hug, and I thought that was really great character development for Theo. And I also see where they're, so like Arender is gonna go follow the orcs. He's gonna follow his promises, and so that's probably gonna lead him to where we find the orcs in the end of this episode. You do see the troll. You see the army of orcs. And the army of orcs have that troll with them, and he's knocking down trees left and right. So I understand why they're mad.
Yeah, and the music that's played when you see the orcs knocking down the trees, it is very reminiscent of the music that's played when you see Saruman having the orcs cut down the trees near Isengard. And that's totally on purpose. It's totally on purpose.
But this is the orc army with Adar, so they look cool. It was a very cool scene seeing them march.
It gives that same vibe of you shouldn't be cutting those trees. So it just makes it hit different.
And then you see Galadriel and Elrond, and they're talking. I like how she says, "We just saw an army of orcs come this way. We're all at war."
Yeah, that's true. Adar's gonna fight Sauron, possibly.
Probably, but I know Elrond said that they're going after, where I can never say what it's called. So Celebrimbor is at, and that's when she says, "No, we're all at war."
Well, okay, because Tom Bombadil is basically telling Gandalf that he needs to do something pretty soon because he doesn't want the Dark Wizard to join up with Sauron. Because if that happens, then you have the Easterlings, then you have all the orcs that are already under Sauron. Sauron's powerful. And if he gets rid of Adar, those orcs would likely go with the other ones. So then you get like a massive army.
There's a small party of orcs that are in the woods with Galadriel in them, and they're chasing a horse, which I'm like, Jesus Christ.
And it's Isildur's horse.
Yes.
Like, can that horse please be rescued? Please?
Yes. I know, that poor boy.
Jeez.
So the orcs are shooting off arrows, and one of the elves gets hit with an arrow.
Mm-hmm.
And they heard that. They also smell it. They can smell too. They even if they heard like a little something, they can sense the elves. And Galadriel heals him
because of the ring, which that's just for this show. The rings amplify power, so that was like superpower. But I think for this show, I think it's fine. I don't think it causes any issue.
I think it fits pretty well. And then she tells them to leave and gives Elrond the ring because she's going to take care of business, basically. And I know Elrond says that she basically because one of the elves says, "Oh, look, she's sacrificing herself," and he goes, "No, she's not sacrificing herself for us. She's sacrificing herself for the ring." And I don't agree with that. I mean, I can see where he's coming from, but I don't agree with that.
I don't either. And to be honest with you, it seemed a bit harsh. Honestly.
Yes, it was rude. It was a very rude thing to say.
It didn't really seem very Elrond, especially since he just saw that the ring can heal.
I know, you'd think he'd be excited about that, but he wasn't.
No, that was a strange choice.
So I didn't mind the fight scene as much. I just didn't like the end of the fight scene. I thought it was interesting. I liked that she went for the horse and tried to save the horse. But see, at the end of that, you have her on the ground. She's still trying to fight, and Adar just comes in and speaks. What is it? What is the word? It starts with a Q. What is the language? A lot of people are shocked that he knows how to say it, and I'm like, well, why wouldn't he know how to say it?
It's Quenya. Quenya
Yeah.
is the language that he speaks, and everybody's kind of fixating on that because Quenya is only spoken by the high elves, and so that really makes you wonder why he knows it and who he was. Because the
Well,
only elves that know that are the Noldor. Okay, Quenya originated as speech of two clans of high elves, or Eldar. It's the Noldor and the Vanyar. They left Middle Earth to live in Eldamar in Valinor. And that's, like immortal land. So if he's a Noldor, that's going to add like a huge level to it because
I
that
think,
means he's a high elf.
yes, I think he's a high elf, and he's one of the first, twisted elves. So I think he was a high elf, which is crazy.
I mean, being a high elf that's like Galadriel, that's like Elrond. Because like the woodland elves, they're not looked at as like, it's a hierarchy basically. So if he was a high elf, I hope they give him an incredible story, and it seems like they are.
Well, I love him, so that just added to it. That just kept. Well, I didn't like how he came out of nowhere, but it did add to it.
Most people didn't like the fight scene with Galadriel because, again, like the orcs fall before she even touches them. This happens every time, and I think it's because she's 5'3", and she's meant to be fighting average and above height, and I just think it just doesn't do well. And I wish they would stop doing these solo Galadriel fights. Nobody likes it. It comes across cheesy because, I'm sorry, but I will say this. Galadriel going up against those orcs, she's going to be fine. Now, take that and compare it to Jon Snow taking off his belt and holding up Longclaw when the Boltons are coming. Like, it doesn't hit right because we know she's gonna be fine. That takes away. So either make the fight scenes less or have her fighting with other elves, but there's just no urgency because we know she's gonna be alright and she's gonna start doing like ninja tricks.
I still liked it. I liked the movements that she did. I thought it was pretty cool. But my major issue is the fact that Adar came out of nowhere and stopped her. Like, I'm like, what?
A lot of people are saying that he appeared.
I love him very much, but I didn't like that because we didn't even see him at all before that. So it's like, why? How did he get there all of a sudden, like that quickly? It's beyond crazy to me. I know all these characters are going to end up in the same spot. So
they are.
And I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty epic. To me, the first 3 episodes, really, really good. This one wasn't as good to me because I really hate it when it's so dark that I have to like repeatedly go into a dark room to watch. And I'm not a fan of Galadriel's fight scenes. I never have been. But again, I'm attached to Cate Blanchett Galadriel, so obviously that's going to factor in on that. So I'm probably going to give this one Tom Bombadil and the Ents really, really made it for me. So I'm going to give it 7.5 out of 10.
I'm going to give it an 8.5, just because I had, 9. I'm going to get an 8.5 because I only had 3 major issues, but they weren't enough for me to hate the episode.
Yeah, not at all.
I really liked this episode. I thought it was fantastic, except for literally like the only one that really got to me was Elrond all of a sudden remembering lore. Like he didn't remember it before. So that really bugged the shit out of me, and I didn't get over it. I'm still not over it.
No, that was silly. That was bad writing.
So yeah, that's why I gave it an 8.5.
I completely agree with that. 7.5 for me, 8.5 from Andrea. I do think the next episode it will pick up, and I think we're in for a lot.
Yeah.
A
Well,
whole
people
lot.
don't understand that you have to let talking scenes happen. You have to let information come in, and it can't be action all the time.
No.
And this episode did have some action in it, so it wasn't like it was a bad thing. But yeah, so I'm excited for next week.
I am too. I think it's going to be really good, and I think it's going to probably go fast. I think the pace is about to pick up because there's just too many armies and too much going on, and we haven't seen Sauron in a while, so that
I
should
know
be
we're gonna get him
interesting.
next. Well, I saw the trailer for next week. At least I think it'll be for next week because sometimes, they might not show the same stuff all the time.
Yeah.
But I did see him with Celebrimbor, and he is again urging Celebrimbor that they need to make rings for men.
Oh, see, all that has to happen, and oh my gosh, when the rings are given out to the men, we're gonna know who the Nazgul are gonna end up being. Oh, that's gonna be wild.
Yep.
As always, it's Amanda here to say thank you to all of our listeners and to ask that if you liked this week's episode, leave us an honest rating. And if you'd like to continue the discussion, please feel free to comment on our post over at our Girls Nerd Out podcast account on Instagram. If you're interested in buying any of our merch to support the podcast and so that we can continue to release weekly episodes, then check it out over at girlsnerdoutpodcast.com. Our podcast logo was designed by Chairman Bilal over on Fiverr. Our podcast merch was put together by me, myself, and I at Southern Mother of Dragons on all social media. If you're interested in my personal merch, check it out at southernmotherofdragons.com, and the designs for that merch were put together by Ryuchi Studios on Etsy after an in-depth back and forth discussion with me to find the perfect merch for me and my loyal supporters. The music played while I tell you about all the ways you can support us and the production of the podcast is Kawaii Girl by Pumpkin Pie. Thanks for listening.
Hey, this is Andrea.
And this is Amanda. And you just listened to
Girls Nerd Out.